Hello chess fans, welcome back to 101 Ways to Win or Lose a Game of Chess. I am your host, Onyx Chess, and today we will be resuming our series on imbalances, namely part 2 of King Safety. Now this is a banger. This game here really shows the power of different imbalances, chiefly King Safety, and it also, I think, goes a long way to helping us think about imbalances properly. I'm not sure about anybody else, but I know anytime we get into the topic of king safety and imbalances and so on, we hear it said repeatedly. You know, you castle your king, get your king safe. All right? And that's what we call a safe king in the chess world. And we dare say this to beginners and underrated players and so on. And it's all we can do to keep from smirking when we say it, isn't it? Because it's not a castle that keeps a king safe. It's not if there's 3 pawns here and none of them have moved and none of them are missing and so on that keeps a king safe. No. A king in a castle. A king in a castle, I mean, this could be checkmate in one depending on where pieces are lined up. So, no, castles aren't safe, not inherently. The position, the tactical justification of any given board position and where the king is in relation to where your opponent's pieces are and your own pieces are, that's what keeps a king safe. It's not a castle, though. It's the tactics. Alright? Either black can touch you or he can't. That's it. Castle has nothing to do with it. Now, castling the king is, in many instances, a valuable tool that might help increase a king's safety or so on. But that's not because of the castle. That's because of the tactical justification. Often there is a tactical justification for putting a king in a castle to where when you put him in the castle, you are far less vulnerable. But that is the terms it needs to be looked at. Why? Particularly with beginners and underrated players, everything they hear is taken as gospel. And if the most that we could afford to explain the situation is to say, kings are safe in the castle, we castle to make our king safe, we castle to... No, that's not it. Then there's no connection made between the tactical justification and the reason for castling, which is what they need to know. They need to learn that. That's exactly what they need to learn. And you're once again glossing over a situation where you're not teaching them what they need to know and what they need to learn and where they need to look. And in fact, what you're doing in this process when we say we castle to make the king safe, or moreover, castles make kings safer, or whatever, however, lazy way we want to put it, what we're doing there is we're actually discouraging the creative process. We're actually, I think, teaching underrated players that they can play chess without tactical justification. We're teaching younger rated players that if they just know enough of these kinds of things, that then they'll be playing the better chess. But that's not it. That's not it at all. It's mastering the communication between the tactics and whether you want to call it imbalances or fundamentals or features of a position. That's what it is. That's where chess lies right there. That's where it lives. That's where chess lives. The communication between the tactics and the fundamentals / imbalances / features of any given board position. That's chess. And when we say we castle to make the king safe, we're missing the point. We've lost the plot entirely. Okay. Let's do a quick review on imbalances. We've discussed a little bit about space. We've discussed a little bit about center. And now we're discussing a little bit about king safety. Well, in terms of center, I think in this position maybe we could say, or pardon me, space. we could say that. I think both sides are about equal in terms of space. Things are about equal. Maybe white has a small edge, because white's e4 pawn is supported by the rook, and he's got a couple pieces, eyeballing central squares and so on. Okay, but I mean, we could call space about even. Center, certainly probably a little edge to white there. If you look, white has control of his central square. Black has some temporary, maybe, control of his central square, but I think we would give center to white in this case. So we might give, a tiny edge on space, a tiny edge on center, or even a significant edge on center. How about development? White has 1, 2, 3 pieces developed. All right, king's allegedly safe in the corner. And white's really just one move from really going all out with an attack. And what a cherry bonus to see that this knight may be pinned to that queen in many variations. Okay, so white's got to be feeling good here. Okay, but it was really this do or die tactic here where black realized he made a big mistake in this opening, and black did well to sense that h5 was probably the only move that would justify a chance to even draw this game, simply because everything is bearing down, and if white solidifies any more center / space, black's gonna be trapping at least 6 points in the back ranks. No opportunity for his pieces to go anywhere. White's just gonna bear down on black's position, and this will be over shortly. So black realized, okay, I'm going to need an attack. I'm gonna need it now. Black's going on counterplay, and it turns out that as awkward as h4 is here, it was actually the best move. Computer agrees counterattack is necessary here, or it's game over. Okay. Black missed a beautiful shot here. Black, I think, didn't quite understand the power in his position. After knight to g4, we see why it's lazy and counterproductive to talk about we put kings in castles to make kings safe, instead of saying we put kings in castles to avoid tactical nightmares. Because it seems to me that white has moved his king into a tactical nightmare, not away from one. Black didn't understand the power in the position. Black did look at this variation, but after excuse me, after pawn takes on f7 check, it made black nervous. There's a lot of pieces that are, bearing down or ready to be bearing down on these central squares and on black's position, and black wasn't comfortable with king to d8. But if you look at it, white's too slow. White's too slow, and once again mate is threatened. Okay, white has 2 moves to block mate. That's it. 2 optional moves. If white moves e5 here, knight says check and knocks off a queen, and white's got to worry about developing these pieces and how he can possibly attack black's position here, which is fairly well guarded. I mean, for being up a queen, I think this is good compensation. I think black can tie this up in short order. Okay, so black missed that. Why? Well, a little bit of time trouble creeping up. Like we said, black didn't open this game very well, and was frankly looking for a draw, and not realizing that any given position may or may not have a game-ending tactical combination. because it's a little bit ridiculous. Because if I told you black to move and win, it wouldn't take you more than 5 seconds to play knight to g4. You would play that immediately. You would just know it instinctually. You would know it. Knight to g4. Black to play and win. That's where it must be. That's where the counterplay must be. You see. But in the game, with a little bit of time trouble and so on, add in, the psychology of feeling you're in a lost position, and you get why, black misses that kind of thing. So black plays slowly, which is wrong because that betrays the theme of h5. Somebody should know. Black should have known better. If the theme of h5 was provide counterplay immediately to sidestep a catastrophic position, then here too, on the same theme and for the same reason, hey, you know what? Let's keep that attack on. It's about counterplay, so let's counterplay. So when black crossed up the theme and then did something completely contrary, which is a slow and passive move of pawn takes e6, bad move. You see, you don't want to really counter your own plans. You want to kind of build on them, not counter them. One move is not divorced from the next. If one move you're going to counterplay, then the next move should be the first things you should look at supporting the counterplay. Unless you have more pressing things to do. In this case, I guess black adjudicated that he did. He was worried about pawn takes check. But that's a ghost. And worrying about ghosts will lose you games, so you got to just look at it like, do what you want to do, and don't really change railroad tracks, unless necessary. Okay, but that's what black does here. Changes railroad tracks. Feels a little better about the position, but nonetheless, black is still wondering what's going to happen with his bishops. It's a little bit unclear. Exactly what's going on. Now white plays on the theme of king safety. Okay. So now it's white attacking the weak f7 pawn. And while, we could say knight has some back defense on it, it's to me a little bit unclear how long that knight's going to actually stay there. Can we count on that defense permanently? I don't know. Probably not. Okay, so I don't really feel that f7 in this position is necessarily well defended. Obviously the idea is queen to f3, bearing pressure down like so, and in tandem with the bishop. And white's going to hope for some tactical opportunities there. Playing down the diagonal and the f file. So now black is, feeling a little, once again questions to answer here. And black, instinctually, black is thinking about things like bishop out and, castle to queen. But the odd thing is this, rook is kind of tied down to the defense of the h5 pawn. Now, if white wanted to say, or if black could just give up that pawn for nothing right now, just say, hey, or white, have that pawn, so my rook can look at your king better. Black would be happy to do that. But to, develop the bishop out and get castled in order to provide that extra defender on the f7 pawn with the rook, then this pawn would fall, and it would be white's file of, benefit. Okay, so that can't go. Black has got to keep defense of that h5 pawn. All right, and so now, of course, black would probably think, well, why even maybe necessarily, put my bishop out that way? Why don't I just play g3, protect the pawn, and leave my options open for my bishop? And these are the kinds of things that we think about. In retrospect, is that good or bad or what? I don't know. But when you still have these black bishops on the board, a black bishop and a queen to prosecute black diagonals, that's a whole lot of space around my king that I'm not too willing or hyper or excited to concede. All right. Further, this pawn is permanent. So this bishop again, it's just. You could look at it and you could play that way. You could say at least that satisfies the demands of the position. But, black really was hoping to actually make this rook effective. So that's another reason black just, doesn't really want to play g3 and get the bishop out one way or another and then castle and then what? What's going on with the board at that point? Maybe it's okay and playable, maybe not. Ultimately, d3 happens with tempo, because after the king would be castled here, d3 threatens the bishop, which threatens the rook. You understand the infiltration just happens like way too fast. The infiltration just happens way too fast. It'd be different if black had a move to maybe, put the king up and defend on, h6 or something to keep that bishop out from hitting the rook with tempo or something like that. But if that time is not there, then I don't know. If the time isn't there for black to play his king into g7, this doesn't look right then. Just doesn't look right. g3 is too weakening. Play something else. And these are the kinds of things that go on in the mind. So black needs something else to do. What then? And yes, here we see the move. No, not ce4. That's incorrect. Knight g4 was played. And after knight g4, all of those threats that we spoke about earlier are completely apparent front and center. Now, it's still looking at a glance like black's the one that has to answer to everything. This is not right that black's king be either A, stranded in the center, or B, tucked behind some broken castle directly in front of a bishop and so on, with so little development and so little apparent available tactics. But it's just one of those positions where there's an amazing amount of resources 1, 2, 3, 4 moves away to where black is safe enough. White doesn't get to impose critical, forcing, tactical considerations that are just going to shift all of the initiative in his favor, as we would suspect it at a glance. It is, but it's just it works differently, and again, it's got everything to do with king safety, and the appearance of which, we're still probably saying black's king isn't safe enough, but that could change quick. The only reason we say that is because it's just a queen and a knight involved in any kind of attack. But if these bishops can't be kept in the back rows, it's going to be a problem. So let's just see how white deals with this issue, and how black plays and how white plays. So after white plays g3, we see black try b6. Now, black did think about d6, but again, that idea was tied mainly to castling in again, having that rook look at the pawn. Right now, black feels, there's a little bit of a problem in his camp, that it looks like the e pawn is never going to get to see e5, just because then, you know, there goes the neighborhood kind of thing. So black's already thinking, you know, if he's going to get these 3 points off the back row, he's either got to invest 2 moves to put his bishop there, or invest 2 moves to put his bishop there. Now, there's a couple of reasons why we wouldn't play bishop to d7. In this variation here, you know, the c pawn gets some help from the b pawn, you know, and the bishop ends up on bishop e7. In this other variation, where the bishop ends up on c6, both chastising that diagonal, but one being here and one here, with that bishop on c6, if at any point this c pawn is undermined, say by something like d4 or something like that, there would be probably big issues here after b4, because b4 would come with tempo, in that it's one move away from putting some serious questions to that bishop, and also that allows simple development along the central diagonal for white's black bishop. It would thrash what little of black's queen side there is, which is probably even the bigger consideration. Because right now, black's already starting to get ideas of, what if my king was over here? Right now. Right here, right now. What if my king was castled queenside? What then? That's what black's thinking right now. Well, number one, there'd be a nice little rook on a relevant central file. The potency of this rook would be muchly mitigated. This bishop would be completely misplaced. Okay? It would really slow white's attacks. Right now, black's wondering, he's saying, well, you know, I didn't castle yet. Is there another way I can defend this pawn without having a castle? That's what black's asking. Can we keep hold of that pawn without putting a rook on f8? Further, what happens when that bishop does achieve bishop e7? How much problems is that? Like really and truly? Because meanwhile, you know, the e pawn can't move for black. As soon as this bishop's looking down this diagonal, white's e pawn is stymied as well. Then further, for white to prosecute the f file, he's got to put his queen on. You understand? So already black's just wondering, you know, can I just get that bishop onto that diagonal? And the whole point is queen castle. That, because the question here was simply, which one do I work at? This bishop or this bishop? Which one? Black thought maybe d6, but just wasn't clear. It just wasn't clear if that was fast enough. It's just, you know, black's maybe a little scared of ghosts still. You know, maybe. You know, but it just feels like white's position is about to, you know, provide some serious problems in black's camp. So, you know, black plays what he knows, plays where he's safe, plays how he feels. You know, that's how you have to play. How you feel, how you know. You understand? And so that was the idea here. Is just think of this as art. Okay? And that was a little bit, you know, a bit of an artistic solution there. You know, let's play b6, tuck that bishop in b7, and at the same time prepare queenside castle. And you know, let's play from there. I think we might have a game. That's what black's thinking right here. Black has no idea that he stands better or that he was a move away from a one game or nothing like that. Black's just trying to hang on here. The game wasn't started very well, and black's just feeling lucky not to be losing yet. But again, the weakness of white's king just still isn't really apparent. It just, I don't know, maybe it's me, but to me it just doesn't calculate. If you have nothing but two attackers and no development and no center and no space and no castle yet and no nothing. I mean, how? You tell me how you're supposed to figure this one out, that black stands so much better. You know, but black does. Black has been up a point now for a few moves, and it's white that needs to answer to sharp play. Not yet, but potential. There's a lot of potential sharpness that black can inflict. So black plays g3, decides that's the way to go. White plays queen out to f3 as planned. And now that's going to tie this queen to defense of the f7 pawn. And now there's bad things happen if and when e5 get played. So again, this is really just telling us once again, this bishop really doesn't make any sense at all on d7. In the d7 variation, this pawn gets played with tempo. Black's gotta, you know, whatever, defend it or move the rook. And then this pawn is overbearing after ideas like that. And just, you know, it's just not fun at all. But simply, bishop b7 squashes all of that real fast. No move for you. You understand? So, and again, it's really only looking at, you know, king safety here, and really just appreciating black, really appreciating how much trouble he's in. That's allowing, you know, black to find these kinds of resources where this pawn is now pinned and can't move and so on. You got to ask, if black didn't make such a terrible start, would black be playing this carefully? Maybe not. But it's an interesting psychological thing we can talk about some other time. How people play better when they just made a mistake, and how people play worse when they think they won. But I digress. So with this bishop influencing now diagonal, you know, now white's wondering about king safety. I'm not sure, and I don't understand why white didn't just maybe play something like, you know, at least king g1 while white still has the time or something. I don't know. Like, why not? You know. But I mean, maybe that's not best. I don't know. I haven't really looked at it, but long story short, white's now ready to activate that bishop down this diagonal. And this is, I mean, white's got to feel good about this. You know, that bishop's coming out and it's going to come out with tempo. Put a question to black's queen. And it's you know, a little bit unsettling. It's a little bit unnerving where she's going to go. I mean, this is a black's already thinking here, like, okay, well, where do I put my queen now then, though? Like, that's the thing. Where would I even put her? Where can she do any good? We already know she's tied to this row. So what's coming down the line here then? What, bishop to f4 and then queen to like yeah, obviously queen can't go e7 because the bishop needs a way out. Because bishop really wants to do something like that. You know, black's nervous. What's black's resolution? Let's hit that diagonal first. I mean, and this is nice because it just plays into where black wanted to move. Anyway, now bishop to f4 isn't the biggest deal. And we can work with this. Nonetheless, you know, white identifies that he's got his last piece to come off the row. Why not? You know, why not put it there? Knockout one of the only defenders around the king. Why not? Okay, so white plays bishop f4 here. Black doesn't want to really take it, but it's looking probably a little bit forced. Probably it's yeah, it's a little bit of a force kind of a thing, I think here. If black doesn't take it, then next move white takes. Queen ends up on d6, and once again that f7 liability just won't go away. So these kinds of things, you know, really have black feeling maybe we can have to just take that off. And again, black doesn't want to take this right here. Black doesn't really want to take that queen off. I think black is starting to realize the potential in the position and how fun it is. Black would love to play something like queen up there and pawn up there. I mean, white is in a lot of trouble. He's very cramped on the king side. And what's even more interesting is, more than cramped on the king side, this knight is not only outposted, but it deserves an exclamation mark. Because if anything ever touches this knight, because black didn't just play automatically and, oh, I gotta get my king over there so my rook goes over there. Oh yeah, I'll drop the pawn, but small price to pay for. No, because black played carefully and justified why not castling was good and why not putting a rook on defensive F7 was good. Now, this knight's there to stay. If this pawn has to come up, take the knight. No problem. I take back your pawn, say check. Big problems for white. Very big, monstrous problems. If king ever does go to the queen side, all of white's pieces have nothing to do with prosecuting black's king. All of black's pieces have everything to do with prosecuting white's king. And it's tough to see how white might even survive that kind of a thing. Okay? So it's to be noted that that knight is there for good. There's nothing can knock it off. Even if a knight takes it and the pawn takes it, we still got fantastic, opportunities down that H file. Chiefly, my rook would probably end up there. And by then, I'd be castled and this rook would come over here. And then that rook could take this pawn or take that pawn, or this queen could take that pawn. Or don't forget, there's a knight back. You understand? There's lots in the position right here. You know, that king, that white king, the king safety has been bust ever since H5, really and truly. Okay. So white takes. Enough of this pressure on the F7. Again, where am I going to put my queen? I don't really want to take, but what else can I do? What other role can I assign her? I don't know. Move here? I don't know. What does that do? You know, it just seems, you know. So, this is kind of where black says, okay, you know what? Draw. Now, I mean, I think black actually is still quite a bit better here. But, you know, both down a pawn. This looks evenish. In theory, we would think white might be able to grab a draw here. I don't think we have to go too much further. Well, it's an interesting game, and if you're going to spend 4 hours, you know, annotating a few moves, why not just at least then play it out and let people see what happened with this game. So black is putting pressure on the pawn and stopping further activity down the F file. White defends the pawn, and black further prosecutes that file. Now, it's interesting thing too about semi-open files is it's amazing how, you know, you can actually do a good job of really shutting down a file. Like you get the feeling always, at least I did when I was first starting, if I had a semi-open file, I felt like my rook could go anywhere on there except for maybe 1 or 2 squares. But no, like you can actually shut down the majority of a file with pawns and kings. If this king's here, of course, you know, only leaving, you know, just a few little tiny holes for the rook to sit, you know. So, you know, interesting, you know, side note, but kick the rook back. If nothing else, this was just to prepare H4. I mean, because here we're sitting already. I mean, how many moves ago? 10 moves ago, we're wondering, oh, if only I could play H4. Well, now the time's here. Let's see, because G4 with tempo, now H4 is on the way. There it is. And now all of a sudden, you know, maybe things aren't even. Now all of a sudden, no, maybe that wasn't a draw after all. You know, with this pawn still being pinned, these ideas here, it's that could be it. Okay, that could very well be it for white here. It's tough to see what happens now? Okay. It's almost looking like just sack that pawn. Just move it to g4. Let the knight in, and see if you can, get some counterplay from there. So that's what it's almost looking like here. Because if that knight is allowed to g4 with this threat here, even if h3 to kick the knight, then not enough time. H pawn takes g3, and that pawn can't take the knight because it's pinned. It's just far too much power in this position here. With a queenside castle and rook support just a few moves away, tough to see how this plays out. So rook takes. Wants to chase the knight. Now white did take a minute there in his defense. But this is just proving too much. Particularly the completely misplaced pieces. I mean, white's got nothing to really hope for. After castles, I think he could pretty much pack it up. White tries one last little shot, but it's just, there's no time. There's no time. Rook takes, and that's mate. So this was it. This was the little thing on king safety and how these kinds of themes, black's king safety and deciding whether castling means that it's safer or if that's what he should do, or everything. This game has it all. If you're talking about the imbalance of king safety and how that applies to the next move that you make, this game has it all. I love it because it is so far different than any other discussion you're going to hear about take the center, develop your pieces, get your king castled, rooks to the center. You understand me? This is what it's all about. This is why you do or don't castle. This is why you do or don't castle. This is what it's all about. This is chess. This is what you do. This is how you do a thing. Now back to the next point about speed chess. Just to, maybe touch on the topic right quick. For most of us, the beginners, the underrated, what will happen when we play these kinds of bullets and blitzes and things like that is your mind it really does. It gets boxed in. Just like any muscle you have, if you don't use it, you can't stretch it. And to look at, and to calculate deep, that requires a certain neural pathways in your mind that need to be strengthened, that need to be used and stretched and built up and exercised and kinds of thing. It's like any other muscle. You don't use it, you lose it. And this is what happens. And it's not a question of if, that is exactly what happens. I remember wanting to go back to the longer chess because there's just something that, those little, you win a little 2-0, 1-1, and you win it by 2 seconds or 1 second or 0.1 second. And you get a little bit of adrenaline kick. There's no denying that. It's a little bit addictive, but there was still something that I was missing from playing longer time controls. And so I wanted to get back to longer time controls one day. I said, let's put that clock on 45-45 and have a game. At the end of that game, my opponent had 2 minutes on his clock, and I had 47 minutes on my clock. Alright? Because you can train your brain to where you can have as much time to think as you want. You'll just keep thinking in the small little circles, as though you only had seconds to think about the position. Stemming mainly from everything tactical, first and foremost. And then fundamentals, if there's time to think about them while it's your opponent's move, kind of a deal. You see? And that continued. I didn't give up. I stayed with the 45-45. I said, that's too long. Let's go 30-30. So that's too long. Let's go, 15-0. That's too long. Okay, let's do 5-0. So I weaned myself off. I went to 5-0 and I started using 5 minutes of clock. Then I went to 10-0. I started using 10 minutes of clock. Then I went to 15-0. I started using 50 minutes of clock. Then I went to 15-10. That's where I'm at right now. So I'm still in the process of weeding myself off these super duper fast time controls where you don't get to think outside of a little permanent loop in your little mind. You see? That's the thing. You see? And with time it can be done. Now I always use all my clock. Now I need longer clock. That's what I'm finding these days. I need more clock. Man, I'm too slow and old or something, you know? But this is a typical thing. If you start mixing and matching fast and slow, no, that's not the way to do it. You really want to play the longer time controls and understand what's in a chess position in a way where underrated or beginner players just simply wouldn't be able to grasp that kind of a learning playing quick clock. I mean, this is like I barely enough time to. I just discussing these moves takes a half hour to discuss everything involved with these positions here. All right. So I mean, if nothing else, maybe that breaks open the mind even a little further. So you can say, hang on a sec. I'm only seeing 2 minutes worth of discussion, 5 minutes worth of discussion, 10 minutes worth of discussion. But that guy, he analyzed that position for a half hour and didn't repeat himself once. Okay, there's more to this. I need to know what that is. And then now you're on the right track, okay? Now you're trying to look for more in a position. And that's what we want. That's exactly what we want. How could that ever be a bad thing? You see, these are the kinds of things we learn here at 101 Ways to Win or Lose a Game of Chess. Alright? Anyway, chess people, may you see the board good, and may your pieces find good squares.